Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. Hey, what's up, guys? It's Scott Groves, the On the Edge podcast. I'm here with my buddy Dean, and I'm excited because I've been away from podcasting for a couple weeks. Luckily, we had a few lined up. I'm also smoking my first cigar in about 2 weeks. I've got the Liga Privada T52, which is one of my favorite go-to daily smokes, but I have not been smoking because I am recovering from COVID. I'm about 90% of the way there, but I'm super pumped to have my buddy Dean on. And Dean and I, we go to the same jiu-jitsu gym, and then as I was talking to him, it's funny, he was born in Germany but then moved to Fort Riley, Kansas, because he was an Army brat, so he was there a few years before I was. Is now actually an officer in the Army, following in Daddy's footsteps, and also works for what we will just call a unspecified defense contractor, because he's a officer in the reserves. And we've just had a really good time getting to know each other in jiu-jitsu, get to hear his story, learn everything about his German immigrant family, and just a really interesting guy. Also, some very, very, very interesting political beliefs, so I'm sure we'll dive in there. Dean, man, thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Scott. It's cool because the byline for the show is it's the intersection of business, politics, economics, and sometimes the occasional drag queen, which got me thinking, I'm not a businessman, an economist, or a politician, so is this me finding out I am, in fact, a drag queen?
Yeah, you definitely got the beard for it. So sorry to break the news to you, but you're going to be our second drag queen here.
You know, I haven't tried to dress on. I think I would look terrible, but it might just be about how I feel in it. And if it's like anything else, I would feel very blocky and uncomfortable. So I might be the worst second drag queen to have on. Yeah, well, we'll have our buddy Teddy, aka Volta, back on sometime, and we'll do a joint show where the two of you can talk about politics and military men and all kinds of fun stuff. So, since I started to get to know you over the last year, you mentioned you feel blocky and whatever, but you've lost a lot of weight. Like, you've gotten really in shape the last year or so in COVID. So, just a short overview of the expanse and decline of my body. I was 150 pounds all the way up through basic training. After basic training, I got 175 pounds of, like muscle and just army sexy. And then I got into a depression, which we will probably cover later. And that caused me to gain a lot of weight. And then as life just kept going and working civilian jobs just kept going, I was eating more and more fast food. So the height of my weight was probably 210, 215. I know for a fact the highest I weighed on a scale was 210, but that wasn't the heaviest I ever was. And then I dropped to about 185 through the course of COVID just because there was nothing to do. So I ran and I ate better, which is weird because most people put the weight on, but I was like, I don't do what most people do.
I was going to say most people, especially if they're a little prone to depression, COVID was tough because they were, locked at home, maybe dissatisfied with their job and or working remotely, eating the fast food, basically doing all the stuff that you said that you did before COVID. And then what was it psychologically about COVID that you're like, no, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to lose some weight. I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to run, do some jiu-jitsu, eat healthier. That was not the default for most people during COVID.
So the true answer to that is I was assessed for my captain promotion back in 2017, which was also, or 2017, 2018, which was also the height of my depressive episode. So because of my weight gains and stuff, it was affecting my PT. My PT was affecting my mentality. My mentality was affecting my eating. And it was like this Ouroboros. But I got two really cool senior leaders. I'm going to share their names. Usually I would try to protect people's privacies, but they were so influential in life. It was a Captain Saint and a Major Randalls, and they were very cool. They worked with me, and they just sat down and gave me a no shit. This is what you need to do to get in the proper place. This is how, by the day, how many miles I want you to be running and doing all this stuff. And because they cared so much to be like, hey, we don't want you to be a shitbag. Don't be a shitbag. I became not a shitbag. And so I dropped the weight. In the course of a month, I cut my run time down from an abysmal 21 at the height of my weight to 15:30.
21 for how far?
2 miles.
Okay.
So I was just every aspect. I was the opposite of David Goggins in the fact that he would be like, I need to go out there and I need to run and I need to beat everybody and be the very best. And then I would go out there and I'd be like, well, I'm not going to pass this run. And if I'm not going to pass this run, I'm not going to pass the next one. And so why run anyway if failure is already the option? I could just be comfortable. I could be sitting in my bed. I'll see him run by my window and Goggins will be like, look at me. And I'll be like, yeah, that's cool. Enjoy your knees and ankles, bud. But like it got me to where I needed to be, and that just helped me in jiu-jitsu way more. So it was like, it was this cool. It was this, you're looking at the garage door. Like
I am looking at the garage because kids are doing weird things, but I'm not sure. See, this is just every time we film a podcast, we get some proof that I actually do record this in the garage because my kids or my kids' friends go tearing ass through here to get their bike or something. You know, we talked about that before we started the podcast, the David Goggins phenomenon of like most human beings. They normally pick the path of least resistance. And then you get some true psychos like David Goggins or Jocko Willink or some of these guys that are kind of lionized in the public zeitgeist who just always seem to do it the hardest possible way. And I'm like somewhere in the middle. I'm not a lazy piece of shit, as I don't think you are either, but I'm also not like, you know, I could drive to jiu-jitsu, I could run to jiu-jitsu. I think I'm going to drive. I might even get some Starbucks on the way home.
So I'm just going to say this into camera because David, Jocko, I know you guys are watching and listening. It might just be my schizophrenia acting up, but I see you in the bushes. Most things in general behave like fluids do, where we take the path of least resistance. Like if you drop a rock down a cliff, it's not going to start climbing up the cliff. Water's not going to start going up the waterfall. When you get to a certain level of like physicality or a certain level of dedication, it is much easier to continue to do those things than it is to degrade, because you have to switch your like brain chemistry around. When you had Jesus on, Jesus was talking a lot about like, hey, you give your body permission to smoke pot and it becomes so normal, and it's like, it's that reward system. When you've devised your entire identity out of being the guy that doesn't take the easy route and you keep charging, it's so much easier to do that. My drill sergeant used to say like, integrity is doing the right thing when no one's watching. The person who's watching is always yourself. So like, if you have no problem being a shitbag, if you have no problem stealing from a grocery store, then it's easier to steal from a grocery store than it is to spend that money. And so the same being said, like, I don't want to discredit anybody, and I really respect individuals who do that, and like their drive is intense. But you've been in the military. It's much easier to be either in the middle of the group or ahead of the group than the shitbag, because the shitbag everybody else is just looking at, and they're always like, dude, come on, fucking stop being low speed, high drag, like get yourself in gear. But if you're in the middle of the pack, if you're just under the radar, if you're leading the pack, people tend to leave you alone. And so like, there's always that mentality.
I used to get so mad at this in the Army. I call it the shitbag soldier syndrome, SSS. I would get so mad because I was like a pretty squared away soldier. I knew my job. I won the post soldier of the quarter of the year or something and got some cool ribbons and got like a free car for a month or something because I answered a bunch of questions. Like I was pretty well put together. And I recall that like I could go weeks having all my shit together, boots shined, you know, doing really well on PT, whether I showed up hungover or not, you know, really like following the prescription, doing all the stuff. And then I had like one screw up, you know, once every few weeks or once every few months. And it was just like fire rained down on you. But then simultaneously, we had a couple guys in our units that were just complete pieces of shit. They came to formation like every day, out of shape, uniform looking horrible, would fall out on runs. And it's like, well, yeah, they're just shitbags. So like everybody kind of left them alone. I mean, they weren't particularly nice to them, but I felt like they got half of the grief that I got anytime I screwed up. It really bothered me.
So there's this mentality in military in general, which I kind of have a problem with, because it's one of the reasons why I just malingered so long between like 2017 and 2020. And it's because we have this mentality that I won't quit on you unless you quit on me, right? So your drill sergeant's always like, get the fuck up, like we're waiting on you. And when that doesn't work, then we turn to the group to motivate them, make this guy motivated. And when that doesn't work, it's like, okay, let's chapter him for failure to adapt. In a unit, that happens where it's like, okay, I need a few people to volunteer for something. And it's always the same 6 individuals, and they're always the hard chargers, and you lean on them and you're like, okay, cool. So when that guy goes through a hard day, you're like, fucking Private Snuffy. You're usually a hard charger. You fuck this up. I know that you're not a fuck up. Let's correct this because we don't want to lose you from the fold. But the guy that's always been outside of the fold, or at least outside of the fold as long as you've been there, you're like, oh, he's already a lost cause. We're gonna excise that one. It's a bad mentality, because what that does is like, people who, I don't care if you're a good soldier. I don't care if you're like the best shot and best runner and shit. I really care if you're a good human being and if you're just a part of the team. Because it's like, there are individuals who can't shoot. There are individuals who can't run, can't do push-ups, can't do all that stuff. But when it comes down to it, like they're the guys who are picking you up out of the dirt, and they're those motivators. And that's something that's necessary. It's kind of like my role on any sports team. I'm not athletic, but I was always the guy that was making the jokes or making sure that like, hey, whatever, wipe that point off. Like, we're good. We're still moving forward. Let's have fun with this. And when you only look at certain metrics, you lose those individuals. And so when you get into this habit of like, let's only care about like the people who were correcting the slitch, which I'm not saying is the entire military in general. I'm saying it's generally something that toxic leadership does. You lose out on a lot of experience, like especially in the reserves. I have people who have master's degrees or who have gone through like theologic colleges to be like seminary in order to be like priests and stuff, or who've gotten busted driving around with gang members and have turned their life around. And those life stories, those experiences, if you can use those things to affect the team, you've become a much stronger unit. So like if you could sit down and everybody has a good rapport together, then you tend to perform better than if you're just like, hey, fucking high speed, climb that mountain, high speed, jump over this wall. Fat bodies don't do anything, like whatever, you're already a lost cause. We're trying to chapter you out.
So talk to me a little bit, because you mentioned a bunch of stuff in there, being an officer, unit cohesion, the path to becoming an officer. Then you kind of fell off the path a little bit. It just dawned on me that since you're an officer, you must have graduated college somewhere. So can you give us like the Reader's Digest? Where does Dean go from high school to officer and what rank are you, by the way?
Oh, I'm a captain.
You're a captain. Okay. Yeah. So, path from like high school graduation to captain in the reserves. And I think you put in your packet to get out, right? Like you're done.
Yeah. It's currently sitting at USARC for them to process to get me out, which, technically I shouldn't have this beard. So everybody watching at home, don't be a blue falcon.
pretend the beard is gone. Yeah. But it's funny because, I didn't realize this until you and I were talking, because I was an enlisted guy. It's like I signed up for 3 years. After the end of 3 years, I either knew I was going to get out on September 11th, 2000, or I had to re-enlist. For you, for officers, you have to request to resign your commission, right? And then they get to tell you whether or not you're allowed to leave.
Right. So an officer is automatically indefinite. So let's backtrack. I was listening to Jesus's episode early, which I suggest you guys go and check out. Jesus was talking about school problems originally. He's the child of immigrants, and there were certain classes where he was like, "Oh, I got a C, so I'm gonna coast and I'm good." I was very much that way in elementary school. I was part of the gifted and talented education group, which is just a way to be like, "Oh, hey, this individual's smart enough to where he gets good grades, but he's not motivated enough to like consistently keep those good grades up. So let's reward him by teaching him how to fence and learn opera and go whale watching," which gave me a bunch of bad habits. But so I went from there, I went into middle school, and I was always good at the sciences and math, but English was like my particular love. I loved the language. I loved writing. I loved being able to convey ideas well. And I had a teacher who I hated who once said like, "Oh, this poem was really good." And that just like stuck, because anytime, this is for the ladies out there, anytime a man receives a compliment about his hair or his car or anything he does, he goes, "Oh, that's going to define me. Hey, you're pretty good at English. Well, I don't like you, but I guess I'm just going to study English for the rest of my life." So
it's one teacher telling you wrote a pretty good poem.
Yeah.
And that stuck.
Oh, yeah. This was also the first time that I got like a C or a D in class that I remember. And it was like in math, because it's like how a gun operates. Once you understand how a gun operates, you're like, okay, cool, I could transfer this between different guns. Well, in math, it was like, once I understood how an equation worked, I'd be like, okay, cool. I don't have to do it 100 times in a row to know how it works. I know that these numbers add up to this thing. This is the reason why this works. So I'm not going to do my homework. And that starts hurting you. That doesn't work in English, because like in English, you could just not read the book, but talk confidently enough about the book, and the teacher just doesn't care enough. So I went from there. I went into high school, dropped out of the GATE program just because there's a lot of work to stay in it. And I started doing like honors and things. The first class that I ever got a D in was actually an English class. And it was because the teacher hated me. And I'm not saying this as an excuse. I'm not like, "Oh, the teacher." Legitimately, we were graded off of what she called brownie points a lot, which was class participation. Raise your hand, I call on you, you give me the right answer, or at least an answer in the ballpark, and we're going to give you some points. She never called on me. And the reason why? I'm terrible at first impressions. So I entered her class with a sleeveless Misfits t-shirt, my dad's combat boots, ratty black jeans, just long hair. And I was literally in my chair, legs fully extended into the aisle, slumped down, hand over it, like for an honors English class. And from that moment, she's just like, oh, I don't like this guy. So she would grade based off of what you thought, what she thought you earned, not what you earned. So the only essay I ever did well in her class was one that she graded in front of me. And I'd always written my essays the same way because I love English. I love argumentation. I love explanation, obviously, as how much I talk. And so it just soured me. And I'm telling you all that to tell you this. I majored in English. And my dad's thing was like, you're not going to get into an English program with a D in English. What are you, insane? You're not going to be a race car driver with a crashed car. You are. Most people crash cars in races. So I went through, I applied to one school, which was CSUN, because applications were both a process and required money. And I was like, I don't want to pay and I don't want to go through a process. I'll apply to one school. I got in. And from there, I majored in English creative writing. And at the same time, one of my best friends, who was a big influence on my life, whose name I'll share because he's no longer with us. So it's like,
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it leads to what we're going to be talking about later, possibly. His name was Terrace Walters. We called him Walters, and he was a big guy. He was like a polar bear, where you see a polar bear and you're like, look at that goofy, cute thing, but you forget that they're big and athletic and can destroy things. So he'd like do 360, like freaking 360 hits in volleyball and just like get him at the 10-foot line, like really athletic, also really big, like portly guy. And he joins the Air Force. And I think like, this is something I've always wanted to do. My dad was in the military. If Walters could do it, I could do it. I mean, he's going through the Air Force. I could probably get through the Army or Marines. I didn't know that there was a reserve system for the Army. So initially I wanted to get into the Marine Reserve to help pay for school. My dad put me in touch with his buddy who became a recruiter. And then my dad also put me in touch with his mentor, who we always used to go to Thanksgiving and Easter from, a guy named Ken Stokes. He's a great individual. And they talked me into going to becoming an officer, going through ROTC. So I enlisted as a combat engineer in the reserves. And then from sophomore year until my 5th year in college, because I took a semester off to go to basic training, I did ROTC through UCLA. And then when I graduated, I got my commission and I became...
So wait, what's that like? So you're going to Cal State Northridge, but then the closest ROTC program is at UCLA. So then you'd go down there for like drills, or how does ROTC work?
So ROTC is a fun beast. ROTC is generally, they'll have a large school like UC San Diego, UCLA, USC. They'll have programs, but there's a lot of feeder schools around that you just won't have the program, because like what people don't know is colleges, in order to receive federal funding, need to do certain things. Like they need to allow for ROTC to operate around there. They need to allow for certain, you can't discriminate against people. You have to be compliant with all these federal laws. You get federal funding. And one of those was ROTC. So UCLA, Mission College, Master's College here in Santa Clarita, all are CSUN, Mission College, all these things. They didn't have a head ROTC program. So they were through UCLA and Pepperdine as well. So you had the A company at UCLA and the B company at Northridge. So if you were going to do what we called a lab, which is usually on Wednesdays, you would go in and you would receive your military training. Like, hey, this is how you do military bearing. Hey, this is battle drill 1 alpha, things like that. And then you would also, on Fridays, you'd go out and you'd do something in the field. Hey, this is land nav. Hey, this is how you do buddy team bounding. Hey, this is how combat water survival training. And then any big training exercises, like field training exercises, we'd be doing with UCLA. And then in your MS4 years, so the way it works is your 1 and 2 year of the program, you're treated like a private. The 3rd year in the program, you're treated like an NCO. The 4th year in the program, you're treated like an officer, which I don't necessarily agree with, because it's training you to be an officer. So I think that should be the lump of it, but most of it is trained towards operating like an NCO, quote unquote, to where you're worried about like small units and small unit things to pass your training, your assessment system, which used to be called LDAC, Leader Designation Assault Course, or some nonsense advanced course it's called now. So you would do that concurrently with your school training. So on Wednesdays, you'd show up in uniform and you'd wear your uniform the entire time. So you're sitting in your English class learning about like I don't know, Edgar Allan Poe's take on like construction theory, and you're just sitting there in your uniform like a chud. And then on Fridays,
is it weird, by the way, especially because what years was this that you were going through college?
This was 2008 through 2013.
So in the minds of a lot of people, like the Afghan war has soured. There's like a pretty big anti-Bush, anti-war. Bush lied. People died. We're in Southern California, which is known as quite the liberal hotspot at a college that I'm guessing is fairly liberal. And so that can't be particularly comfortable going through like college, quote unquote, wearing a military uniform.
Okay, so this is going to be a little snippet to encapsulate that. College made me more of a Republican. The military made me more of like a left-leaning individual.
Really?
Yeah.
Explain that.
I'm so weird when it comes to group like ideologies. So when I was going through the recruitment process, while walking through campus, someone yelled at my recruiter, who was a medic, "Baby killer." And it's like, oh, okay. And so you retaliate against people pushing against you. So when the people go, "Hey, baby killer, the military's bad," things like that, and they also go, "These are the things we believe in," you're like, well, I don't believe in the things you believe in because you hate us. And it's like, if somebody likes you, you tend to go towards that. Like if somebody likes me and then they're a dick, I like have such a problem telling them they're a dick. Like, "Hi man, you're cool. You sound smart and stuff. Also, I think anyone who drives a Honda should be shot." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks, man. That's pretty cool. You're okay in my book. I mean, don't look at my Honda, but you're okay in my book." So that happened. And the big programs on our school in CSUN were business, their theater program / movie program. And then they also had a big like Chicana studies, which CSUN celebrated Cesar Chavez Day because Cesar Chavez got a lot of rights and better working conditions for immigrant farmers throughout California. And so like, because that footprint is in the valley, they celebrated it. It's got a big footprint. And so you have a lot of really good, strong history with the Latin community, with like the Hispanic community, whatever the preferred term is. And so a lot of people are going there, they're learning these things. Now the military's take on it, or at least a lot of people in uniforms take was on it was like, if you don't like the country, why don't you go back home if you think Cuba's so cool? Which is weird. Because if you love something, you should be able to criticize it. And so that made me lean more and more towards the like idealized, hey, Obama's doing these things that are weakening the country type stuff, even though most of my military career was during the Obama years. And then when I got into the military, I was meeting people who were coming from all these different backgrounds, especially in basic training. And I was like, oh shit, we're all the same. We're all receiving Medicare through the military. We're all getting paid the same in basic training. All the E1s are paid as E1s and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, a lot of these ideas that people want aren't bad ideas. And you could see them work in the system. It doesn't work very well because it's the military, which is a bureaucracy. But it works in the system. And so that slowly leaned me towards thinking like, oh, these things aren't bad. And then you'd meet somebody who's like, oh, hey, I'm from rural Kentucky. And then you'd meet somebody from like Boston, and you'd meet somebody from New York. And they generally have the same life experiences outside of like the nuance. Oh yeah, I was bullied by a guy who talked like an asshole. Well, I was bullied by a guy who talked like an asshole with a Southern accent, you know? And so you're like, okay. And so I started leaning both left and right with all these political ideologies. But the question was, how is that with college? And the answer is, some of the teachers respect you more to where they're like, I need to step out of class. You, the guy in the uniform, make sure people don't do anything stupid. Some people disrespect you more because ideologies clash. But generally, people just saw me as an individual as I was talking to them. So I became, and this is a reason later why I don't like talking politics very much, or at least taking stances on certain charged political issues, because you become a face for the military. And so all the people that I was dealing with, they were like, oh, hey, Dean's articulate, though he's rather dumb. Like, let's not, don't let my accent fool you. He's articulate and he seems like a nice guy. Like, the military can't all be bad. They're not all a bunch of jugheads. And then you're like, okay, cool. And so you'd get friends. Some of them respected the military, some of them didn't, but you're an individual. And so it opens up the world. And the same thing happens. You meet somebody who might be like, a Marxist and they're like, oh yeah, I believe that the United States should be an actual communist society, and you go, oh, that's cool. That's really weird, and I don't think that would work. And we're not talking about the nuances of the fact that the United States is essentially a bunch of city-states or a bunch of like countries that are joined together under one constitution, but have like all these different states' rights. So it's not going to work because like, oh yeah, unionizing labor over here might not affect labor over here because we're facing different issues. It's the EU of North America, like, but you meet those people and you're like, oh, these people aren't bad. These people aren't inherently dumb. There's nothing wrong with them. So you take away the politicizing or the propaganda and you start treating individuals and the ideas that individuals hold with more credit. And so that like helped me evolve and take all these different steps in both military and civilian life. And then when it came to actual ROTC, you're learning what it's essentially the stuff that you learn in basic training for the first couple of years. And then you're also learning like military history, things like that. And the idea is to build adaptive leaders instead of like going through basic training and getting the nice little brainwashing system, which as a combat engineer, they're the greatest thing in the entire planet. Essayons, let us try, you know? And you'll say the same thing about infantry with your baby blue colors and whatnot.
Basic training was so weird because, you know, I consider myself a somewhat intelligent guy, and you know, even though you're going through the challenges of the physicality and there's kind of the esprit de corps, and, you know, we have a fully voluntary military, so I signed up. When you got a moment to breathe, which is intentionally not often, and you kind of took a step back, you're like, oh, I can see what they're doing here. They're brainwashing a bunch of 18 and 19-year-old men to do what they're told, so that when the time comes and they say, hey, storm that beach, you don't think about the fact that like half of you might die. And the military is world class at getting people to give up their individuality and all kind of row in the same direction. I mean, it's really amazing the way that they have fine-tuned this over the last couple hundred years.
So my favorite thing about the engineer corps, combat engineers especially, is we didn't have that mentality of like, oh, do this thing and you won't die. The combat engineer mentality was, listen, if we ever have to do our job, which is the combined arms breach, you have a general life expectancy of between 3 to 8 seconds in the breach. And you're like, oh shit, we're all going to die. Like when I was a platoon leader of 3rd Platoon, our motto was over the bodies of 1st and 2nd.
Yeah, because if I always think of like military designations, that scene in Full Metal Jacket when they're at the end of basic training and the drill sergeant is handing out the orders and he's like da da da, you shoot people, da 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 da, you clear mines, da da da, you shoot people, and then he gets to Private Joker and he's like, what the fuck is this? You're a Marine and you're gonna go write for a newspaper? I don't know. That scene to me is just so epic as they're giving out the orders.
That's what's cool about people like myself and you and my father who trained like OSET, is when you go infantry, when you go combat engineer, when you go armor, even when you go MP, which come on, like who wants to go MP?
No one. All the MPs were dicks, man.
Yeah, they're segue. My first squad leader, amazing guy, Sergeant Tellez. We lost him to COVID. Fantastic individual. He was a sheriff. He was a dedicated squad leader. He taught me the most that anyone had taught me about leadership, about actually caring about the individual. He used to say that his old MP company, which I'm not going to hold that against him, half of them wanted to be cops and half of them wanted to be criminals. I'm like, yeah, I can see that.
Totally.
But when it comes to OSET training, you're with the same drill sergeants, you're with the same people, and it is geared towards that subject. So in basic training, for those of you who don't know, it's like, what, 4 to 8 weeks, something along those lines?
I think it was 8 weeks, 9 weeks when I went through. Yeah. And then we did AIT, which is the Advanced Individual Training. We did it with the same group of drill sergeants because it was like, if you were infantry, you just stuck with the same group. So we did like, I think we did 8 or 9 weeks of basic training and then 4 weeks of like 11 Bravo training. So that was just your normal infantry guy. And then we did like an extra 3 weeks of mortars. So I think I was at Fort Benning the total, like just under 4 months or something. We were
around the same thing for combat engineers. And so combat engineers, 12 Bravos go through with 12 Charlies, who are the bridge builders. And so it's that exact setup. But if you're going logistics, if you're going supply, anything like that, you go through basic training for your 8 weeks and then you go somewhere else for AIT, and you're not with drill sergeants, you're with just instruction, like you're with the schoolhouse. You're with a different group of people, you have more liberties. And so what that tended to be was if you go into any engineering office in the entire army, you're going to see like 8 castles everywhere. We're going to have a castle on the wall, and we'll have like castles on all our coins.
There's a lot of esprit de corps with the castles.
So much esprit de corps. I mean, I've got it tattooed right here.
Holy shit. I didn't even notice that. You have an engineer castle. Oh, that's nuts.
In the castle on my collar, baby. So you go through all this stuff, and from day one, the first thing that the drill sergeants tell you, other than like your mom and dad aren't here and put your head in the bags, is you haven't made it into the engineer corps. You're not even a soldier yet. Then you become a soldier because you graduate basic training, which for everybody else, 8 weeks, you learn how to march, you learn how to shoot, you learn how to ruck march, you learn how to wear your shoes right, you learn how to wear your hat right, which most people don't do.
You learn how to have no individuality whatsoever.
And then you move on to your next training. But from part 1 of engineer is you're not a soldier. You became a soldier. And it's like, well, you're still not in the engineering regiment. And the entire time it was, you have this long in the breach. The engineers are the best thing. As an engineer, you learn how to solve any problem, because when you get to a wall, most people will turn back, but engineers will know how to go through it, over it, under it, around it, every other option. So it's bred into you. And the Kool-Aid is so thick, and it's a nice engineering red, so it's tasty. Unlike that blue Kool-Aid that Monsters drink.
The light blue Kool-Aid, which was only felt cool to me because I was always a big UCLA fan, and they have that same baby powder blue. It's like the least manly blue is the color of the football team that I like the most in college football, and the infantry blue. It's very baby blue.
Blue used to be the color for baby girls back in the 1800s, and the infantry color actually used to be white. The artillery color is red. That's where the engineers get their color, red and white. But I'm not going to just sit here being the engineer facts guy, because like if you want that, you could just go check out my non-existent podcast, Essayons. Let us try to explain the engineers. But you get this nice brainwashing program, because it's not, hey, you're a part of this thing. It's you're not good enough to be a part of this thing. So you have to get good, and then you get good enough to be a part of that thing, and then they say you're a part of this thing, and it's you for the rest of your life.
So did you go through just a normal enlisted basic training with all the enlisted guys, and then enlisted AIT for combat engineers?
So I went through OSET, one-stop unit training, like the infantry.
Okay.
So it was only Bravos and Charlies. Day 1 was engineer instructors, and they were with us until we graduated AIT.
Nice.
And then we joined the best regiment in the entire military.
And you said you did that between your sophomore and junior year of college?
So I went in 2010, which was my first semester sophomore year. So I took that semester off, went through basic training, resumed the spring semester, 2011, and then that caused me to be slightly off schedule with ROTC. So I took another year so that I could graduate with my peers of that year group. So I ended up doing 5 years, but my last year was like 3 academic classes one semester, and then a whole bunch of just electives the next semester to make up like a full load. So I took like children's literature and young adult literature, and like
you're reading the Twilight Sagas.
Film is lit. Oh yeah, we were reading like the Golden Compass, and you'd be like, "What's the Golden Compass about?" And you're like, "I think it's about the Catholic Church and how it takes people's souls away." And they're like, "You're right." And like give you a high five, and then you put on your little dress and your little hat, and you walk away, and you just become an adult with a lot of debt.
Yeah. So, but when you're going through like these active duty deployments, like base training, AIT, I'm guessing you're getting paid, but then when you come back, is there any pay for being an ROTC, or are they just allowing you to attend the trainings because they assume you're going to become an officer?
Okay. So if you become contracted in ROTC, which about, let's be liberal and say 75% of the people become contracted from MS 1 year all the way through. About year 3 is usually when people sign contracts, unless they're super high speed, then they might get it year 2, or they might get a scholarship year 1. They start giving you a stipend that increases every year. First, it's like $150 a month. By graduation, I think it's like $350 a month. And then for the reserves, our training, while it is active duty orders, and you do get a DD 214, which those of you don't know, that's the release from active duty.
Yeah, it's like your final report card from the Army when they say you're allowed to go. Here's all the shit you did.
Right. So you do get one of those, but it doesn't count towards like your GI Bill. So you have 2 GI Bills. You have your Montgomery and you have your 9/11. As a reservist, unless you do 90 days of active duty not in training or deploy, you only have your Montgomery Bill reserve.
Got it.
Which is another like $350. So after basic training, after ROTC, I would get my ROTC stipend. I would get my basic training, my GI Bill monthly stipend, And then I was with another program called, I think it was Army Education or something like that. It was another program that helped pay for my tuition, but it didn't cover everything. So I eventually had to take out student loans.
So you're getting $500-$600 or something a month from the military because they assume when you get out you're going to sign that officer contract.
Once you sign your contract, you either become an officer or, having failed the program, you become enlisted.
Oh, interesting.
So what happened was I had signed an enlisted contract in 2010 with the reserves, a 6 and 2, 6 years drilling reserves, 2 years IRR, because all contracts are 8 years. Don't let your recruiter tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
And then after I commissioned my third year of college, or I got my contract the third year of college, that original contract was voided. I paid back half of my bonus, and then I worked towards my commissioning contract, which was another 6 and 2.
Interesting.
So once I graduated, we had a little ceremony. I had my Army blues on because that was the uniform at the time. I got my little lieutenant bars on my hat and on my shoulders, and I was like, "Oh, look at me! I'm so special. I'm an officer." And because I did a little bit of enlisted time, like, oh, people are gonna respect now. Like, they respect you based off of the credit of who you are as an individual and who you are as a leader, not necessarily your rank.
Right. No, that was always the way. I mean, I remember Captain Brady at Fort Riley. I got tasked with driving him around, and Captain Brady was this complete badass who had been with like Rangers, 82nd Airborne, all kinds of stuff. And then when he decided to go from enlisted, because he was an enlisted guy for like 10, 12 years in all the most high speed units, then when you go officer, he was, I can't remember if he was a tank officer or if he was an infantry officer, but for some reason there was a thing where like they wouldn't let you back at like Ranger Regiment until you did a couple years in the normal Army. So you take this guy who's like most high speed, tip of the spear, you know, he was getting ready to go to like selection, but then also knew that he wanted to be an officer. So he became an officer, and then he gets stuck at Fort Riley, Kansas, with a bunch of tankers. And he was not happy. He was not happy at all. And then I remember when he got his captain commission, I was driving him around. He was trying to do everything he could to either go back to like Ranger Regiment or go to Special Forces selection or something, anything to get out of just like driving around in a tank and a Humvee, because he was bored out of his mind.
For those of you who don't know, Fort Riley, Kansas is the taint of America.
Yes. Oh, there's a monument on Fort Riley, Kansas, where it is the dead center of the continental U.S. It is legitimately the middle of nowhere. It is.
You might be like, oh, Florida, man, and Florida's so crazy. Or like, oh, New Jersey sucks forever. Whoever is a stupid individual who doesn't understand like the awesome aspects of New Jersey, which is just basically Taylor Ham. Fort Riley, Kansas is a shithole. Junction City is a shithole. Though some of the worst memories I had growing up were over there. Like there was a pedophile living down the street who was caught by the cops. Like it was just trailer parks and like there's nothing to do. So why not do nothing and get in trouble?
It's real bad. I remember growing up in Southern California, like, you know, we've got problems in Southern California, but I feel like it's a fairly enlightened, multicultural, you know, I remember my dad and his best friend would always make jokes with their friends about like them being lovers. Like it was just like, you know, it's just not, there's just not a lot of like social faux pas here where, you know, then you get to Fort Riley, Kansas, and you're like, oh, Junction City, Kansas is where they pull all the people that are on Jerry Springer's show. Like it's, I mean, just the level of depravity and poverty and the people that get stuck there because they, you know, they either wash out of the military or they have legal problems in the military. I mean, God, it was a horrible, horrible town. It's like every stereotype you could possibly imagine about walking into a Walmart was just everywhere all day, every day in beautiful Junction City, Kansas.
Oh yeah, and this is a stolen joke, but Kansas was so flat you could watch your dog run away for weeks.
Yes.
Like, fuck, we're gonna have to get another one. I'm not driving out there.
I remember from Kansas City, basically until you hit Colorado. Kansas City's right on the border, for those that don't know, of Kansas and Missouri. Not the capital, ironically. That's Topeka, Kansas, which is another hole in the wall that's kind of horrible. But you could drive from Kansas City to Fort Riley for sure, which is a couple hours, and then several hours on to Denver, and literally never see anything higher than an anthill. And it's just the most boring. It's just a horrible place. I'm sure people live there that enjoy it and they find a way to make it lovely, but for my money, it was the worst possible place you could live outside or inside the country.
In basic training, we were in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, lost in the woods. And from my barracks, the original barracks, we had a 3-story barracks, and it was like divided into small rooms instead of bays. And then for AIT, we moved to a giant bay barracks, which was more military but less cool. We were on the 3rd floor, and you would look out and you wouldn't see any elevation change. You're like, weird, this place is flat. But then every time you went on a march, you're going up miles up a hill, and you're like, I don't get it. I can look from my barracks all the way to St. Louis, yet somehow we found a hill that the sappers run up with like their boats. It was insane. But my brother drove me back after commissioning because I went back to Fort Leonard Wood for EBOLIC, Engineer Basic Officer Leadership course.
How long is that?
It's about 4 months as well. But the engineering world is awesome because whereas an infantry guy, you're going to learn about the artillery, you're going to learn a little bit about artillery and working with armor and stuff, but you learn a lot about the weapon systems and the tactics. With the engineers, we have, outside of the Cab Scouts, the largest technical manual because you have to learn construction, vertical and horizontal, how to lay roads, how to build buildings, how to calculate cement drying,
how to blow them all up after you
how to lay minefields, build bridges, blow up bridges, clear minefields, breach doors. You learn because the engineers are the people that no one ever knew what to do with. So anytime a new task came up with, they're like, the engineers could do it. So in Iraq and Afghanistan, which I never deployed, if any of you guys have those questions, but a lot of my soldiers did, and they were really awesome individuals, really cool people I learned a lot from. But when those wars came around, it was like, hey, we have IEDs in the roads and we don't have anyone to deal with them. Let's just get the engineers to do it. So we'll give them the kit, we'll give them all the equipment, and we'll have them roll out and do route clearance and clear mines. In World War II is, hey, the Germans want this bridge, let's blow it up. Hey, the Germans are trying to blow up this bridge, let's go get that. In the Battle of the Bulge, we were taking out tanks and out bridges. And on Normandy, they were clearing obstacles to get people off the bridge. Like that scene, for any of you who don't know, if you're watching Saving Private Ryan and they run up to the sand berm and they're sitting there and Tom Hanks is looking around with his little shaky hands and whatnot, and they go like, fuck, we need to clear this. And there's the dude that runs with the giant tube. That's a Bangalore.
Bangalore.
That guy's
those things are badass.
They are.
Can you describe what a Bangalore is for people that don't know? Because it's pretty badass.
So a Bangalore is about like a 6-foot long metal tube just packed full of C4. And what you do with it is you slip it into like a wire obstacle, or you slip it into something that you don't want to exist anymore. And they've got these ends like that you can marry up, 2 female ends and like a nose cap. So you can string like 6, 7 of them together, and you pull it and it just blows up, and so it will clear a route, and then you have to clear it with your mine detectors and then everything. But it opens up obstacles. So it's just a giant explosive tube.
It's amazing.
And so he runs up with his giant, they refer to him as like torpedo, sometimes, but he runs up with his Bangalore Torpedo, places it, blows up the obstacle, everyone goes through. The engineers were also clearing mines off the field to get people clear. So there's this one story where there was a mined area that the Germans had mined. They needed to get off the beach, and so the engineers were literally body clearing it. They would go up, one engineer would hit a freaking mine, he'd lay the flag, they'd either find a mine and flag it, or if they blow up. At one point, an engineer used the flag, stuck it in his dying body in order to indicate like this is the clear path, and that's what got people off the bridge. And so like that mentality in these individuals, we got the engineers from the French. The engineers originally started off protecting artillery. They were the infantry for the artillery regiments. But we got all these different things. Like in Korea, we built a giant tunnel, then put explosives under the North Koreans, and then we blew up a portion of their army. In the medieval times, we would dig under walls, put a bunch of swine in hay and burn it, because the pig fat would burn so hot that it would pull towers and pull walls down because it would melt the stone. So like they were the Swiss Army knives. And so our training covered like all these different aspects. How to make sure that waterways are clear and unpolluted, how to assess like the infrastructure of a city, how to do offensive and defensive operations, how to do counterintelligence operations, like all these different things, because the infantry is probably going to take umbrage with this, but our idea as 12 Bravos or as engineers was we were just the smarter infantry. We could shoot, but we could also blow shit up.
How much did you get to blow up in like this advanced officer engineer school?
So The answer is not as much as I wanted to,
Right.
but
Which is the answer of like every 20-year-old boy. You're like, they're going to let me blow shit up.
But compared to the average individual, quite a bit. Like in basic, we learned how to make charges to breach walls and doors. We learned how to make water impulse charges. We learned how to do cratering charges. In Ebola, we only had like really 2 days, but we would go out there and we'd learn shape charges and cratering charges and how to tie in C4s in like C4 and whatnot. We learned how to tie all our demo knots and how to use the new and the old school style of explosives. We learned the mechanics behind explosives, things like that. And so that's a lot of words to say. We basically blew a 40 by 40 foot floor into the Missouri clay, like hole into the floor of this Missouri clay. And while we were in our bunker, like 5-foot chunks of earth raining down around us because you've taken a giant tube, like a barrel of explosives, attached more explosives on top of it in order to detonate it and created this charge. And it's to blow up roads and bridges and whatnot. We learned how to cut steel with explosives because explosives in themselves either push or they cut. So like anytime you see an explosion in Hollywood that's all a bunch of fire, the fire itself is just wasted energy. Realistically, you either put it on the side of a road and the force pushes the vehicle over, literally takes it off, or you put it on like a steel beam or something and it explodes and it cuts, it shears it. And so that's like, if you're going to take down a bridge, you don't want to stack a bunch of explosives and just try to push it with concussive force. You want to strategically place it and have it shear certain sections so that the bridge collapses under its own weight, things like that.
So this is one of the things, that shocked me when we were doing C4 explosives and whatnot. The volume of material that it takes to destroy something is pretty astronomical. Like you see in the movies, they put like a little patch of some plastic explosive and you see like this whole wall disintegrate. It's like, no, that's not how it works. Like the amount of C4 it took just to bring down a telephone pole or a metal pole was shocking to me, how much material you need in order to get that shearing explosive force.
So the numbers are probably incorrect in my mind. I believe C4 has something like 2.5 pounds to 4 pounds of explosive force for a block. And like if you open it up, it looks like the inside of an ice cream sandwich, which is really, really cool. It looks so tasty, but it's super toxic. And so it requires like pressure and heat to set off. So if you do it wrong and you put your blasting cap or whatever your demo cord inside of it, you don't get enough force, or enough pressure. It blows up into these tiny little chunks that are like heated, that if you would step on them, that pressure would be enough to like blow off your toes or your foot or whatever. But like a grenade, the effective area of just one of them isn't that much, because realistically, we don't want, hey, Private Scott, here's a single thing of C4 in your backpack, and then you're running through a combat zone and that blows up and takes an entire company out. Like that's just physically and every instance about that is like super improper and dumb and not physically possible. But when it comes to like calculating, we like to say P for plenty. But if you have a steel beam, it doesn't take that much, because you're not taking like 10 pounds of explosives and just putting it next to the steel beam. You're taking the intersection, the cross section of these steel beams, you're offsetting them so that the force of one, like this earlier statement, everything's like water. We tend to go the path of least resistance. The same thing with any plasmas or explosives. So if we have like a shape charge, you just put a little bit of styrofoam, it directs the charge one way. Well, if you put 2 pieces of C4 on a beam, the charge is going to go this way and the charge is going to go that way, and it's going to cause a shearing action. So while it is going to be an explosive expanse, generally, like if you set anything off, like let's say in space, you're going to get like a nice little circle, because everything is the path of least resistance. If you set it off against, if it's tamped, generally like you put sandbags or something behind it, it's going to funnel the explosive force one direction. So you do that, cuts a steel beam. But one steel beam does not make a destroyed bridge. So you have to like find a few steel beams. You have to find a few supports. You need to take it out. You need to do all this like calculations and math stuff.
Yeah. Anybody who hasn't ever watched a shape charge go off in slow motion, immediately go to YouTube and Google shape charge slow motion, because it's amazing. To your point, putting a sandbag behind a piece of C4, or like, I remember those little cone charges that like the Navy SEALs used to bring down boats. Yeah. So it creates this cone of like hot magma that just, it's amazing how funneling that shape of the detonation creates a little like softball size Yeah, a little softball-sized magma ball that will just melt through the hull of a boat. It's the most amazing thing. So everybody should go Google this. Stop listening to this podcast and go Google shape charge slow motion. It's just the coolest thing to see what we can do with explosives.
So just a random fact, because I'm nothing but segues and random facts. I don't think I've answered a single question.
That's fine. We'll get to the good stuff later.
But as a kid, I didn't read kids' books. In third grade, my dad gave me Richard Marcinko, Demo Dick Marcinko's Rogue Warrior book, which is his biography about founding SEAL Team 6 in what was then called Red Cell. And he's talking about shape charges, and it started my fascination with like military and special forces and like explosives and stuff, because it was like, oh shit. So everybody else is reading Harry Potter and it's like, oh, you're a fucking wizard, Harry. And then I'm reading a book where he's like, I'd rather have scars on my fists than stars on my shoulders, and like fucking blowjobs feel good and stuff. And then this is how my buddy died.
Marcinko
like,
was the first Navy SEAL that wrote about it. He was the first one. And I remember, there wasn't this like cult of personality about Navy SEALs. There wasn't Jocko with his podcast. There wasn't there's a bunch of book series I read that are by ex-Navy SEALs. He was the first one, and he was really shunned because they were supposed to be the silent warrior and, not take credit. And like nobody, unless you had seen the Navy SEAL movie with Charlie Sheen, nobody really had any concept of what they did. He was the first one that was writing crazy shit where you're like, wait a minute, there's really a unit that does this kind of stuff?
So this is one of my subjects that I like talking about, so I'm going to talk about it. Demo Dick. He starts off as a frogman, underwater demolition tech or whatever, and that's the precursor of the SEALs. Then he becomes a SEAL. He goes to Vietnam. He goes through that whole rigmarole. He comes out. They task him with creating this new object, this new group, which they're going to refer to as SEAL Team 6, because they only had 1 and 2, but they wanted the Russians to think there were more, so they named it 6, and it's going to be counterintelligence. It's going to be counter, like terrorism, counterintelligence, like espionage type shit. He goes through, he gets all those individuals. Then they have him form this thing called Red Cell. I believe it's called Red Cell. I read it so long ago, and I forget, it might not be its name. It definitely isn't its name anymore. But their goal was to test the military readiness of bases. So like the 2 of the most infamous ones is he stole a nuclear sub from a Navy base and kidnapped the commanding general of the base. His team also tried to break into Fort Knox, and this is where he gets a lot of flack because one of his guys was shot by the guard, and that like raises a bunch of issues. He rubbed the Navy wrong in so many different ways, and later as a contractor he went to prison. They say that he shorted the government on like parts for grenades or something along those lines, like he broke the contract and he went to prison. Some say it's retaliation for all the shit he did as part of like Red Cell or whatnot. It's up to you to decide. I really suggest you read the original Rogue Warrior.
I wonder if he's still alive. Do you think he is still alive? Yeah. Dude, he would be like God's gift to get him on the podcast, because I've seen him in interviews and he's fucking crazy.
He's like Jesse the Body Ventura. He's a fucking personality. But the cool thing is, like, so this is another random segue, but it's going to tie in. The original author of James Bond, Sir Ian Flemming, was a espionage person for whatever the British, like MI6 or whatever, during World War II, the operation of OSS
was it
or whatever.
SAS? Or no, that's their commandos.
Yeah,
right?
He wasn't part of the Special Air Squadron, SAS. He was part of their team of ungentlemanly warfare, whatever the British called it, which is a cool last name.
Right.
And so he went through, he did all that stuff. He got out, he started writing the James Bond series. And the theory is that he wrote it about a guy he knew at the time. And so like Wild Bill came from OSS and he started the CIA. And like, so there's this general cult of personality when it comes to badass people who could do badass things by themselves. And Richard Marcinko falls into that. But after Rogue Warrior, after his whole like prison stint and stuff, he's no longer in the military, so he starts writing like political thrillers. So like Rogue Warrior 2 or whatever it's called, which isn't the true story of Richard Marcinko. It's like Richard Marcinko, the character, going to do all these things. I read those books too.
I loved it. I read them all too.
Oh yeah. I was reading those in 3rd and 4th grade. The only reason I stopped was because book reports, you were getting rewarded with pizza. Like you would read a book, put it in the computer, you'd get a coupon for pizza. None of the books I was reading was in that elementary school computer database, which was very weird. Like why in a story where a dude gets blown out of a building and lands on his buddy's back and goes, if you had ticks on your back, I'd marry you. Why wasn't that like part of fourth grade reading? I don't understand.
So funny story about fourth grade reading. I'll never forget Mrs. Johnstone. She really wanted us to read, I think if you were an advanced reader, because I also was in GATE, gifted and talented education. I think they wanted us to read like The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings. And I remember my buddy Jeremy, one of the smartest guys I've ever met, and sadly he moved to Utah when we've kept in touch. Actually, moved to Boise, Idaho in 6th grade, and then kind of has had a great life, great kids. Works really hard. But I'm like, dude, if this guy would have maybe stayed in LA and gone a different path, like he's the guy that could have cured cancer. Like he's that smart. And in some ways, although I know he's carved out a great life for himself, I feel like his talents were wasted swinging a hammer. Anyway, I just remember he was so far ahead on reading that I'm like, hey man, why don't you just tell me what's happening in the Lord of the Rings? Because I don't really like this shit, this fantasy stuff. I want to read like sci-fi fantasy and cops and novels. And so I was reading in 4th grade this series of books that Jean-Claude Van Damme movie Time Cop is based on. And I remember my mom got called into the principal's office because I went up to my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Johnstone. I'll never forget this. And I was like, hey, I don't really understand what this like line of dialogue is. Can you explain? And it was Time Cop talking about his girlfriend. He was like, and Susan was a woman of 1,000, or the woman of 100 talents or 1,000 talents, 999 of them between the sheets. And my 4th grade teacher just turns bright red. This is like smut. I'm basically reading pornography in 4th grade. But I was much like you. I was so into the military stuff and the sci-fi action stuff and the War of the Worlds type stuff. I just couldn't bring myself to read any of the stuff that was on the recommended reading list.
It took me so long to get through Lord of the Rings. Like I went to go watch the movie, and this is a fun story. It's also another segue. Sue me. We went to go watch the movie, and I forgot if it was the first one or the second one. I'm pretty sure it was the second or third. It was when Legolas like surfs down the Oliphant's nose and looks all like sexy and CGI.
Oh yeah, that's the third one, The Return of the King. Yeah.
So I had gotten the book. I couldn't get through it because like that book starts 12 times, which say what you want about Tolkien, and like I couldn't get over the prose because it's all like old English, like, and it starts fucking 12 times, and then he goes to Tom Bombadil and it starts again, and he's just like fucking walking around singing poetry and shit. And I was like, I can't do this. But we're sitting in the theater, and there are these two heavy-set women, is what I'll say. And they're sitting directly behind us. You know how a theater is usually set up. It's the amphitheater seats. All the good seats are on the left. If you get there late, you're in the right. So me and my dad were in like the little right section above that entrance ramp. And these girls were right behind us. And the entire time, Legolas would do something. They'd be like, oh my God, I wish I could just fuck them. Like, oh my God, and my dad just leaning over to me. I'm like 13 at the time. He's like, I'm so sorry for this. And they're like, oh, I just sucked the dick right off of him. And my dad's like, I am so sorry that I put you through this. And it's, oh man, the things that, again, like really, I'm sorry that you have to go through this. Right. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, damn, this is weird. And that was my first introduction into really like hardcore nerd fandom and all like their weird like sexual bents and stuff, which, hey, more power to you. If you want to fuck Mickey Mouse, you do that. Just don't do it around children.
Yeah. If you're into elves, I definitely was into elves because I had the biggest crush on Liv Taylor from all the Aerosmith videos that she was in. They did that album Get a Grip, and it was like Liv Taylor was in a bunch of the Liv Taylor, Alicia Silverstone, and I think Eddie Furlong were in a bunch of their music videos from like On the Edge, Get a Grip. That whole album is just amazing. And I had the biggest crush on Liv Tyler. So when she was, I can't remember what character she was in The Lord of the Rings, but she looked really good. So I had a little elf fetish myself.
Yeah, I'm terrible with names and faces and general descriptions of people.
Wow, that's hard.
But I could like tell somebody very quickly from like behind if I'm like, oh hey dude, it's Scott, like by the way you walk and your hair and stuff. But if you're right in front of me, you're like, Dean, I haven't seen you in 2 days, and I'm like, I don't fucking know who you are.
You can't make me laugh, man. That's the only recovery from COVID I haven't got over yet. When I laugh, I still cough. All the other symptoms are gone, thank God. But the nagging cough when I laugh is really obnoxious. I want to go full circle back to something you said about when you were in college, because I think this has changed, and this has been maybe this will lead a little bit more to your political beliefs. You said, when I was in uniform, whether people respected, disrespected, whatever, they kind of looked at me as an individual. We could have a conversation of ideas, right? And you mentioned the typical college Marxist, which is funny because I think most people that are college Marxists haven't read the Communist Manifesto, because if they did, they'd probably be disgusted by it. But I feel like that's changed a little bit from, we'll call them the Marxists or the left or the progressives, where it's like when I find myself arguing with somebody who's, more farther left, this is how I feel. I feel like I think they're probably a good person who has bad ideas. They think I'm a bad person who has bad ideas.
So,
and maybe this is just my tunnel vision because I, obviously lean more right, which is more libertarian, but I feel like that's changed a little bit, even in the last 10 years since you were in college, of it's like, no. It's no longer they think your ideas are bad. They think you're bad, like you're an evil person. And I feel like that's changed in the recent political discourse, which I know you pretty much stay away from, but do you get that feeling at all?
So I don't necessarily stay away from recent political discourse. I just don't make any like avowed statements, because on any social media you'll see pictures of me in my uniform, because I'm proud of what I am, and that's one of the best accomplishments I ever done in life, and it's really like set me forward in a path and like developed me as a person, whatever. But it's the militant nature that people have, and you see this on the right, you see this on the left, you see this with centrists too. There is this idea that we can only really recognize about 150 individuals as like fully functional human beings, and as we like develop these circles that we're in, the autonomy of that individual, the actual human nature of that individual gets harder and harder to conceptualize. So we might have like a family of 5, and we know that those are all individuals and they all have unique thoughts, and we have our close friends like 15, 20, whatever, and then as you get farther and farther out, they become more and more conceptual. So like if I say there are kids starving and dying in Africa of AIDS, well, starving in Africa, and dying of AIDS, to you, that's a conception. To you, you don't understand those as real individuals the same way that you don't see Legolas as a real individual. They're these higher conceptions, and we're nothing but evolved monkeys, unless you don't believe that, in which case, fuck you, we're nothing but evolved monkeys. So our primitive tribal brains have these limitations, and it's a reasonable limitation. I mean, a computer can only process so much information. We can only process so much information.
So just to go back to that real quick, you're not saying that people can't care. You're just saying they can't really conceptualize that individual who's dying of starvation because it's so far out of that 150 people that we can really be close with and understand on a personal level.
I mean, let's bring it closer to home. If you see a homeless guy on the street, the homeless guy on the street, you could see him as a human individual. You could see him and you can understand possibly his mental reasonings and things like that. And you conceptualize him the way that you would conceptualize your friends. Whereas like if my friend does something fucked up, my friend is an individual to me. Group, generally we think of like the homeless, or we think of kids in Africa as like these groups, and they're these conceptual groups to where they don't resonate in us the same way that me talking about Scott resonates in me.
Right.
And so when you take that to the political forum, we're talking with strangers who are on social media, who are on Facebook, who are watching whatever news organizations, reading whichever they have. They're saying these things with confidence. And it's geared towards these people that think this way are the reason why these things are these ways. You need to recycle to save the environment. Big business does worse things for the environment than your plastic bottle will. And like the conceptualization of big business is this boogeyman. So then you have, this guy's the representative of this boogeyman. He's a bad person with bad ideas. He's the reason why these things are these ways. Same thing politically. No matter what you say, unless you personally know Senator Ted Cruz or Devin Nunes, they are caricatures to you. They are these conceptualized, if nothing else, then they are their avatar on Twitter that you're rallying against their tweets, which I don't necessarily agree with either man. I'm not going to say anything about it, about them personally. But when it comes to those things, it's like, okay, I am a leftist Marxist and I believe these things. And you go like, well, I knew a leftist Marxist once and he was an asshole. So all leftist Marxists are assholes. And you get these conceptualizations. And it's what we were talking about earlier on the mat. Rage Against the Machines is avowed communist, like anarchist, anti-system, anti-police state musicians. But then you see Republicans and you see people who are pro like Blue Lives Matter or pro all these different political statements being like, oh yeah, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. And it's like, yeah, that song is literally about racist police officers, but you're using it at your convention where you're like, I support police officers. There's a dissonance there, but it's because we don't marry the conceptual dissonance to who we know as individuals and what we conceive as these individuals. So that's a long and overly explained way of saying we just don't see each other as individuals when we're arguing on the political spectrum. So we tend to attack what our idea is of the thoughts instead of dealing with the individuals. And now I make bad first impressions. So when I said like people would see me as an individual and they'd be like, oh, they can separate that, they would probably be like, hey, most army people can't be this awkward and fucking dumb. Like one guy in class just never liked me because the first time I saw him, he walked into class to talk about some sort of like literature book that the college was putting out, but he was wearing a Kings jersey and I was wearing my Devil's hat and I was like, the fucking Kings suck. And it was like, yeah, he's a group identity and I'm just trying to like, you know, make fun of some sort of group because sports folks talk shit about other sports folks. It's our bonding ritual. And like the age of men, which sounds very Tolkien, the age of men that we used to be a part of has changed. I'm not going to say for good, I'm not going to say for bad, but generally like the whole ridiculing somebody for who they are or what they believe is tend to be shunned upon, except for in these special places. And those special places tend to be politics, tend to be certain groups. So if you say cancel culture, somebody goes, oh, it's one of these cancel culture guys. They're so fucking so gross. And I bet he just wants to say the N-word and like make fun of trans people. And it's like, no, what I'm saying is that people shouldn't have their lives destroyed because they have an idea or they say something that you disagree with. Like the personal apology, it has lost all credit in society because if dredge up a tweet where I say like, I don't know, all Russian people have flat heads, eat kielbasa, and murder dogs. And you're like, look, this guy's anti-Russian, and you publicly apologize, and it's like, oh, that's fake. You can't personally apologize to that individual because it's like, oh, hey, I upset Scott. Scott, I'm sorry. Scott's cool with me now, but everybody else who's seen that hasn't seen it. So when we say like cancel culture sucks, which people will argue that cancel culture isn't a thing, whatever. When you say cancel culture sucks, it's this idea that we punish people. I showed you that skit from Gillian Keeves, which was the football coach, and it ends with like,
very funny.
I said racist things in the past, but I've changed. But no more people can change. You guys are all douchebags and racists forever. You guys suck. I'm the last person that gets to change. And that's like the situation that we're in. You have people who did these things before they realized these things were wrong or before they realized that these things hurt each other. And like, as much as I'll say on the subject is, I don't think you should take a defining characteristic of somebody and make that an insult. I don't think that like saying all Irish people are stupid or all Mexican people are lazy or whatever is conducive to an environment where we all merge together because it gets us off on that foot where we automatically ostracize and make the other person the other. And so like, yeah, we should call out certain things and be like, hey, we probably shouldn't do that. That's probably not the coolest thing, but I'm not going to try to get you fired over certain things. And I'm not going to try to say that you're a bad person or destroy your life because me and you differ ideologically or politically, or because you said that all people from Bavaria are like lederhosen wearing fucking sausage fiends and that we're the reason why World War II started. And I'm like, hey, most of that can historically be considered accurate because, hey, if you look at the political climate in Germany prior to and leading up to World War II, yeah, that could be a political correct statement, but fuck you, you deserve to die. Your children don't deserve to eat. It's weird.
You know, you mentioned something there where it's like past that 150 people that we can have a personal relationship with, you know, you have to make certain group judgment calls, right? Like there's a group of people that if I'm getting money out of an ATM at 1 o'clock in the morning, there's a certain demographic of look of person, build of person, dress of person that I'm going to be more fearful of than this other group of people or look of people or whatnot. And that's totally unfair, but it's what we do as humans to assign groups. And to your point about cancel culture, there's this weird like purity test now where people will dredge up stuff and it's like, hey, maybe I agree with Dean in 90% of his group dynamics. You know, I'm with you on the military stuff, and I'm with you on the jiu-jitsu stuff, and I'm with you on us smoking cigars and talking politics. Oh, but now there's this one piece of the purity test where like we've drugged something up on Dean that he has a disagreement on some group dynamic that you and I might have, and now I'm not supposed to like agree with you on anything, and I'm supposed to hate you, and I'm supposed to try to get you fired. It's really crazy that there's become this weird purity test, mostly in politics, but on a lot of social issues as well, where it's like, no, I know a ton of people who I think they're great people, and I agree with them on 40, 50, 60, 70% of where their opinion is, and the other 20 or 30%, I think they're wrong, and or those ideas are batshit crazy. Doesn't mean that I should hate them and try to cancel their ability to get work. I mean, it's just crazy to me that this is where we are in modern society.
So this is going to be a weird statement. Hang with me on this one.
Okay. This is going to be good.
The idea that, oh, I have a black friend, like, oh, that's a way for somebody to say that, like, they're not, oh, anyone who says I have a black friend is racist. It's the greatest trick that the devil ever played on society, to borrow a phrase, because it is quite literally a good defense. Hey, I'm not racist. I'm not against these individuals. I have Jewish friends, black friends, Mexican friends, whatever. I'm married to a Jewish person, a black person, whatever. Like, it's a very accurate litmus test to be like, no, I don't exclude people because of the category that they come from, whatever protected status that is, trans, gay, whatever, because I do hang out with those individuals. But people are like, no, that's just like the indicator. Only racist people say they're not racist because they have black friends.
Totally.
And so let's take away this argument. Let's take away this defense. I don't hate libertarians. I have libertarian friends. Like, you would never find me going like, oh, all libertarians need to die or whatever. My friend Scott's a libertarian. Like, oh, only Marxists say that to make sure that they're not anti-libertarian. It's weird. And I think that a lot of this comes from that general concept where it's like, oh, I'm not anti-Semitic. I have Semitic friends. Oh, you're just saying that so people don't think that you're racist. Evolves into, you say something that people don't agree with, and no apology that comes across sounds genuine because you got caught with your hand in the cookie jar. Therefore, you are always a cookie thief. Like, somebody very close to me in my family, or in my extended, like, you know, adoptive people that we consider family, once said, you suck one dick, you're a dick sucker for the rest of your life. And it's like, I don't agree with the sentiment, because people can do whatever people want. And I don't like the idea of labeling people based off of certain like actions, because we can grow and we can change and everything is fluid and adaptive. But like, the sentiment is true when you talk about the political climate. You say one thing that can be reasonably or unreasonably construed as sexist, and you're a sexist for the rest of your life, because we don't allow people to change, because there's this global footprint. That's wwhy I'm super glad that even though social media has existed most of my adult life, I very rarely post, because I don't do like any sort of self like promotion. And when I do, all my stuff is private, so only like my small group of people can see it. So it's like, oh, hey, most people, when they see me, don't automatically go, that guy's military, that guy's in the army or whatever, because most people don't get to see my social media until after we're known, and then we put it out, and then you get to see things like me standing next to a giant crater that we blew in the floor. And it's like, okay, my identity is first how I come across to you as an individual. And then when you get access to all of the like the group identity, the group concepts, you get those things. In the army, seeing somebody in their civilian clothes is always weird. In jiu-jitsu, seeing someone off the mat is kind of weird, because it's like, oh, I didn't know that that's the way that Scott dresses. I don't know that, because all I see is you walk in with your like spats on and your rash guard, and you put your gi on, and now you're just a guy that wears like a blue belt and the white gi. And like, as we start to get to know people the old way, we start to learn more and more about people. But now it seems to be the inverse. Now we have the maximal knowledge about the groups that they're in, and then we get the individual later. It's like you run into a comedian. Sarah Silverman is one of my favorite comedians from like her original work. I think one of the best jokes is how one of her albums opens up, which I'm going to butcher, but I love it. It's a guy told me that my pussy smells like a peach tree dish. It's flawless. It's excellent. She's an amazing comedian. we don't necessarily agree politically on a whole bunch of stuff. And as she became more of a political activist and that became more of a social media footprint, she's not a conceptualized person to me. I'm only introduced to the products that she puts out. So as that product changes to something that isn't in line with my ideology or anything that I agree with, not agree with, but like certain things, like I liked Bernie, she liked Bernie, whatever. But as that changes, your conceptualization of this individual changes. I don't know her on a personal level. I don't know anything about her. So I only get to see the products that she puts out. That used to be the case with stars. Now that's the case with your grocery store clerk.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, that cute girl from the grocery store has a Twitter account. And on that Twitter account, she says all babies need to burn in a fire. And she's an antinatalist. And you're like, oh, weird. And every time you see her, you see that. You don't understand if it's a joke or if it's like some sort of misconception or if it's just a straw man argument that she's putting up because somebody keeps going like, oh, you're against children because you're an antinatalist. You're against children because you're an antinatalist. For those of you who don't know, antinatalist just means somebody who doesn't believe that they should have children or that raising children in the current climate, however justified or true it is not morally correct.
Yeah, these are the people that are like, why would you bring a child into this world? It's like,
right.
Well, your parents probably thought the same thing.
Why would you have a child in the middle of a war-torn country?
Yeah.
Like things like that. And I don't discredit people for their beliefs or their ideals, and I like to have conversations with people about what they're passionate about and certain things. So I do engage in some of those mediums. But if that's all you know about her, then that's the only conception you have. So every time that you see her, regardless of whether you're thinking about it proactively, you think like, oh, hey, it's that woman that hates babies. And so you get ladies who get fired from their jobs for making a joke, which I don't think that lady that got fired, she was on the plane and the joke was basically, I'm going to Africa. What if I get AIDS? Ha ha, I'm white. I'm not going to get AIDS. And people were like, oh, that's racist. And realistically, what that was more like was a satirical comment about the culture where it's like, oh, because there isn't a giant AIDS epidemic in this primarily white country, then we don't think about it. We think about it only as something that affects these African people. But we don't read nuance. We don't read anything. You just read the 150 characters. She gets fired by the time she lands in Africa. Now she's out of a job. And you're like, oh, and now that's permanently her identity for most of the country.
Yeah.
It's if you Googled her name for a job search, that's most likely what's going to come up. And you're like, okay, that's a pretty fucked and pretty incriminating thing to be said about our society, but it's true. And I want to believe that it was the same way in the 1800s. Like if we walked into a village and you're like, oh, that's Scott, that's the town drunk. Then anytime Scott's like, hey, you guys, I don't think that we should be paying taxes to this corrupt duke who is using it all to build like castles in Germany instead of helping the unified German army against the Austrians. Then you're like, get the fuck out of here, town drunk. You don't have any
drunk, right?
Any opinions. You're a fool. You're the town drunk. Like that shit.
I remember talking about this with my buddy Justin like a decade ago about, and the version that we were talking about is like, hey, at some point, the 2034 president or presidential candidate is going to have 100% of their life online. So, within 15 or 20 years, you'll be able to see the guy running for president and you'll be able to go back in time with his tweets, with his Facebook, with, his blog posts or whatever. And you'll be able to see their entire political evolution, their relationship evolution, how they look at the world, the bad jokes that they made. And I remember a decade ago, Justin and I saying like, oh, well, that will be a good thing because it's kind of like porn. Once like everything's out there, it's not really taboo anymore, right? And our thought 10 years ago was like, oh yeah, everybody will just have everything out there in some level of social media, whether it's meant to be shared or shared on accident, and nobody will really care. And sadly, we've gone the polar opposite where it's like, oh, well, now we have this ammunition to dig up what you thought when you were 19. And, my political thoughts, the jokes I would make, the inappropriate things I would say at 19, very different than what I would say or do at 42, right? The culture's changed. I've changed. People are supposed to evolve. And it's a real shame instead of saying like, hey, everything's kind of out there. Isn't this an interesting thought experiment to see how people evolved? Now it's like, no, we see this joke, this tweet that you made in, 2012. Now we gotcha. Now you can't run for president or you can't do this or you can't have a job. It's fucking crazy. It's nuts.
When I was 17, so I've had like 3 pieces published in very small, one of them might've been a scam. probably was a scam. I'm on to you guys. I had it published.
These are pieces you wrote, like short stories or whatever.
I had a short story published in my school's art lit magazine, mainly because I had some friends on it and they really pulled for it. My dad now has a line from it tattooed on his neck,
nice.
Which he might listen to this. And I'm just going to say this. It's primarily a line about like the effects of depression and the effects of pressure. And that line is somewhere along the way, or I am machine because somewhere along the way, being a man has lost all of its meaning. And so the sentiment
it's pretty deep, bro.
Thank you. The sentiment behind it was I'm super depressed. Like my natural emotional barrier has become this like robotic thing. Like I feel like life is like I'm a cameraman in life and I'm separated from all these things. So I feel like a machine. So I wrote that sentence. He got it tattooed on his neck. It means something else for him. It's still cool. I like it. I like seeing it.
I mean, in fairness, your dad has like a couple hundred tattoos, so it's not that special.
Yeah, but it is only one of 2 on his neck.
Okay, perfect.
So it's like that line and a dragon. So I'm almost as cool as a dragon.
Okay, sweet.
But like there was that. Then there was a short story about a road trip that I took with my buddy who was published in this anthology where they reached out to me, which seems kind of scamish. I never like checked back up into it, but I have a few of those sitting in my house because it's cool. And then one of them was a poem I wrote in high school at the age of 17, and it was anti-Iraq screed, much to the way like System of a Down, like we're all bringing our bombs or whatever. And so if you were to ask 17-year-old Dean and 21-year-old Dean the stance on the Iraq war, 17-year-old Dean, who was like a punk, was like, fuck this, I'm never going to do anything like that, fuck you, fuck the military, fuck the army, fuck the war, it's all unjust. 21-year-old Dean was like, I want to be deployed so I could have that patch on my arm so people stop looking at me as a sleeve. I want to go do my part. And that is the course of 4 years. And it's not even a hard 4 years. It was a suburban life 4 years. And like, if that lingered out, if a joke I made on an improv team in high school, which is the lamest sentences you could string together. I didn't know it was September 11th. I made a September 11th joke on stage. It upset the crowd. I had to go out there and I had to apologize. If that was filmed and put out, like so much of any, like if I wanted to be a politician, if I wanted to be famous, anything like that, that would be my blackface, right? Oh, you went out there and you made this inappropriate joke on 9/11. Well, it's like, yeah, but we grow as people. When I was 13, I was different than when I was 15. Like your group of friends, all the things that you're saying, you want to say fucked up shit just to make people like laugh. In the army, the gallows humor, the dark humor, the amount of times that like just blatant pedophilia jokes are made in the field because there's nothing to do and you're sitting around and you've run out of like the Camels that you're smoking and you've got 2 hours off mission and you're just sitting there and it's like, well, I could either replace that guy at the guard, which he's going to be there for another hour, or I could go fucking, I don't know, clean my weapon, which we're in the field conditions. So there's like no place to clean your weapon properly without getting sand in it. So it's like, oh, hey, here's a really fucked up joke. And you like say it and it makes people laugh. And it's like, it's all just to elicit this response. It's not, hey, I actually think that this thing hey, I actually think that like we should go out and do these things to these people. You're just doing something to like help the time pass and to elicit certain responses in laughing. Like my old sentiment, which is still a current sentiment, is if you laugh, you can't be mad at me for it.
Totally.
And it's because it's like, you understand that it's a joke. So when you get a comedian who goes up on stage and he makes this joke, and we're so far off the initial point that I forgot. No, I remember what it is now. He goes up on stage and he makes a point and he goes like, I don't know, rape joke, or like says the N-word, and the people in the audience laugh and he quote unquote gets away with it. Like, oh, hey, there are white comedians who go out there and say the N-word. Like Louis C.K. until the whole scandal was, there were articles written about him in like Jezebel and all these magazines. Like, this is how you tell a proper rape joke. This is how you tell a proper joke like this without hurting people's feelings. And then he got into the masturbation scandal. And then it's like, oh my God, he's the worst thing that's ever existed. And you're like, 2 months ago, here's an article that you wrote. But for you, that 2 months is 2 months of your time. For him, that's 2 months of conceptual, invisible time. Like he only pinpricks into your life like raindrops. And so you like see those things. Now they're written in articles and you don't see how the room reacted. You don't see the intent or any like specifics in the way that it's delivered. Like there's way different than like if you say it just dead faced. Like one of my favorite comedians is Big J Okerson. He has this joke about transsexual people in which he got in trouble for using the word tranny. He's like, it's the words around tranny that are the effect. If I said all trans people are an abomination to God and deserve to die, you wouldn't go, hey, at least he used the right word. You'd be like, that's an abhorrent thought. That's an abhorrent statement. And I've done that so much discredit. But like the idea behind it is, no, if you're accepting of those people and you tend to use the wrong words, don't lionize them or like drag them through the streets. Like listen to the sentiment. If he says it dead faced, if he says it with a different tone, it's different. Yes, you have the right and the ability as an individual to be affected or to be upset with any sentiment that comes across. You don't have the right to destroy someone's career because we're specifically hurt by it. And you don't have the right to exclude that individual from ever changing, from ever growing. Like growing up, gay meant something different in insults, or calling somebody a pussy meant something different. And now we tend not to use it. Like if I go back and watch a movie from the 90s, I'm like, oh, I can't believe they said that.
Yeah.
Like I used to think this was so funny because culture changes and we change with the culture. But to go back to that earlier sentiment, that poem I wrote is different than what I am now. That joke I told is different than what I am now. I don't discredit the me that was back then, and I don't discredit the growth that I had to go through. But like now I probably wouldn't make the same joke, not because I wouldn't be like, oh, this isn't going to elicit a funny response. I'd be like, oh, this might get me in trouble, so I'm just going to hold it inside. And so this is another slight tangent, but the more we ostracize people for what they say, the better racist and truly bad people get at disguising what they're saying. Absolutely. And the worse we get at detecting it. There's this video about a Republican operative talking about the shift in the Republican Party where it used to be, oh, we don't like these N-words. And it was like, oh, now we're going to say we don't want low income families in this area. Or now we're going to, and that's how you get across the same sentiment without using those things. But we become worse at detecting them because like, oh, ow, I got hurt by that pinprick. Now I'm not going to build up my immunity or my ability to like feel pain or determine what is a threat. I'm just going to avoid needles altogether. I'm just never going to use a needle for the rest of my life. And it's like, oh, so you're just defeating your ability to handle needles properly. You're just defeating your ability to identify what is the true issue in this sentiment by just blocking out all of those sentiments. And while, yes, I don't think anyone should say racially motivated things to hurt people, if I'm with my best friend who is Hispanic and like I make an off-color joke at him, he knows that it's coming from a place of like love, and like he'll make the same off-color jokes about me, and it's coming from this instance where it's like, I know our relationship. I could say these comments. Somebody on the street might hear those things and be like, these horrible racists are about to kill each other. Oh my God, that guy just said something about Germans, and this guy just said something about like Native Americans or indigenous populations or whatever. Oh my God. It's all like this perception, and we take all of that out when it comes to social media, and we take all of that out when it comes to just writing or academic issues in order to kind of give ourselves the ability and the leeway to be mad at individuals. If I don't agree with what you're saying as a libertarian, and I just devoid that from who you are as a person, I can use that to ostracize any sort of libertarian and identify them in my mind with that. Okay, this libertarian said that like we shouldn't be paying for low income families, and all libertarians think that now, and all libertarians are bad people. And I could create a range where I could now ostracize that group and feel the resentment that we naturally feel towards other human beings at them, but not feel bad about it. Because I know if I go, oh, black people are evil, and I have that thought, I'm like, oh, I'm a racist. But if I go like, oh, all libertarians are equal, I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm right, because they're politically aligned with people I don't believe in, and fuck those guys, because it's not the way that they were born. They chose to have those beliefs, which I don't believe that beliefs are chosen. But that's a different topic, and I'm rambling so hard from the initial point.
No, it's a good one. I really like it, because I think, there's a bunch of podcasters I like, Brett Weinstein, Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, they're always a proponent of like, no, you don't limit offensive speech by getting offended and then trying to block that person from speaking. You allow them to speak up, and you allow them to have more offensive speech, and you allow them to put all of their ideas out there, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, and then you debate against those ideas, right? Like that's how you actually, to your point, you don't become numb to it, and you don't kind of push bad ideas further and further underground and have these dog whistle terms and stuff. It's like, no, let people say exactly what's on their mind, and then either choose to disagree with them publicly or privately or debate against them. And then that's how you see progress, versus like, you just make so much stuff off limit to say, then you're not really progressing human knowledge, or you're not really progressing people's ability to think critically, because you've cut off the initial jumping off point to have a conversation. And I think it's gross. Like I don't ever want to limit myself from making an opinion, because I want other people to give me their counter opinion. And I don't know why that's so scary for so many people.
So it goes back to this, there was a group of the FBI back during the civil rights movements. I forget its name, so I'm not even going to try to remember it. But it was essentially like a counterintelligence group. I think it was called like CoinPro or something like that. CoinPro. I tried to remember it. I promised you I wouldn't. I feel sorry. But their whole thing was like, how do we discredit these thinkers? So they wiretapped Martin Luther King. They found out that Martin Luther King was probably infidelitous and like had all these affairs. And it's like, oh, that's how we discredit him. Look, he sleeps with people that aren't his wife. All the valid things that he's saying about society, don't pay attention to those. He's a bad person.
Right.
Bad. And so we tend to do that, and we do it the opposite way. And that's what's so insidious about it is, hey, this person used the wrong words to express a point. We don't have to listen to anything that this person says. In the army, we say, give them enough rope to hang themselves. Yeah, I absolutely want racist monsters to let me know that they're racist monsters, so I don't have to hang out with them.
Right.
Like if somebody came up to me and was like, I hate all Chinese people, I'd be like, oh, cool. I'm never going to go grab Chinese food with you. I don't want to hang out with you. You go do your thing. People who I find out are avowed white supremacists aren't my friends anymore. They aren't in my group. And it's not because they said something. It's because they believe something, because they've done these things and they've made it so apparent. Now that it's so hard to discern who is and isn't those things, because everybody is now racist if they say something that you don't agree with, regardless of what side it is. Republicans will say any sort of advancement to like help Black Lives Matter is racist against white people. And it's like, oh, any sort of talk like that is racist against minorities. And it's like, well, it could be. It could all just also be humans suck at communicating. Humans suck about getting points across. We don't ever talk with nuance. We're not in nuanced areas. We're putting it out on social media and stuff. It might be that this person just isn't aware of the way that certain groups perceive certain words. It gets into the sign and signified thing, which if I say cat, you might think Garfield, I might think my cat. And so that communication will change. If I say like, oh, all cats hate pasta, and you're like, Garfield doesn't, but it's like, my cat won't eat pasta. Like, we're talking about two different subjects, and that's what occurs because of lack of nuance, because of the semantic argument and all these different things. And so it becomes difficult to have these structured conversations with individuals that we see as individuals that we can divorce from whatever their group identities are, without being reactionary on like social media and all these different things. And I think that that is the true handicap when it comes to social media and when it comes to communication in general. It wasn't the initial subject. You had been talking about ROTC and the military and all these different things.
Doesn't matter. So I am interested, because a lot of what you're saying, you know, like most human beings, has some nuance on both political sides. If you had to classify yourself in a particular political group, libertarian, progressive, Republican, Democrat, whatnot. Where would you classify yourself as you stand today? And that, you could, I don't know if there's an actual title for what you would believe, or if there's a group of beliefs that you could kind of, carterize around. Like, what would you consider yourself politically? Because I feel like when it comes to voting Republican or Democrat, you're probably, like me, feel pretty politically homeless.
So I just want to point this out because that was a fluid segue, and everyone, if you're keeping track at home, give them a point on the scoreboard. So you are a libertarian, which is, I'm assigning you that label now. No,
Perfect.
what is
and I would say libertarian, small L in my beliefs, but not really a libertarian, capital L as in the party, because like the party has some very disjointed thoughts, just like a lot of people I think are liberals, small L, not liberals, capital L. So I would consider myself a small L libertarian, which tends to mean when there's a binary choice between a conservative and a progressive, I'm usually going to vote the conservative, or I'm going to waste my vote maybe on the capital L Libertarian Party. But yes, I would definitely put myself squarely in the libertarian camp, like mostly personal freedoms, smaller government. I'm what you would call a night watchman libertarian if we were getting really political, where it's like, I do think that there's some place in the world for government, and I do think there is some place in the world for regulation, and it's usually around personal freedoms, some type of police force, some type of military, some type of guiding hand, maybe even the economy, but kind of like a small L libertarian that believes that there is a place for the government. So try putting that on your voter ID card.
But who night watches the night watchers, right?
Yeah, well, that's the problem. That's why we have to maximize for personal freedom, because if not, the night watch just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger.
So when it comes to my political identity, we had this conversation on the bat, and this is what led to me being invited to the podcast. Classically, libertarians are identified as anarcho-capitalists, meaning, as you said, maximal personal liberties with a market system that allows the market system to operate because it knows what's best for itself. For instance, the oil industry should self-regulate. Tends to be a libertarian ideal. I myself classify myself classically as an anarcho-humanist. So I agree when it comes to personal liberties that your ability to swing your fist should end at the tip of my nose. Your personal liberties shouldn't affect my ability to perform my personal liberties. If I want to get an abortion, your personal religious liberties shouldn't stop me from being able to get an abortion. Not to make a stance on either side. I'm going to try to walk between the raindrops here. But the humanist portion, I believe that the government's sole purpose should be the protection of the population. And when it comes to the economy, I believe that the government should protect us from the free market in the sense that, hey, if Verizon just dumps 1 million pounds of lithium ion batteries into the Colorado River and they get fined and they just increase all of our Verizon bills to pay for that, they haven't been punished. We should have government out there to protect us from those things. Hey, you can't go and do these things without punishment. We can't have, let's say, if we send a colony to Mars, SpaceX shouldn't be able to be like, hey, there's a mineral resource on Mars. I'm not going to send you any sort of funds or any sort of resources until you sign over those properties to me, which is my biggest fear when it comes to privatization in the space race is ghosts of Mars scenario. But the government should have a go-between there. They shouldn't say, hey, all people in all states need to abide by this specific regulation because I don't like cookie cutter scenarios, but they should ensure that all Americans have access to healthcare, that all Americans have access to certain safety nets. People would classically refer to that as socialism when it comes to the safety nets. But I also believe that Americans should have their civil liberties. I believe in common sense gun reform, but I don't believe that guns should be taken away from people. I believe that you should have the right not to incriminate yourself. But I don't believe that if you're a rich man, you should have more liberties when it comes to legal rights. Because like the anarchy when it comes to anarcho-capitalist, when it comes to anarcho-humanist, is towards the libertarian freedoms of like the Constitution, things like that. But it's also towards this idea that there shouldn't be class. If you make $10 million and I make $75,000, you should still be subject to the same laws that I am, which is how our political system operates. But if I can't afford a lawyer, I get the shittiest lawyer, or I get like a public defender who is handling 100 cases, whereas you get like a giant law firm that's got like 10 lawyers, and so they get you out on loopholes. And we see this all the time and things like that. That's what the classless society is towards. It's not towards, hey, there shouldn't be rich people, hey, there shouldn't be poor people. It's rich and poor people shouldn't be treated differently. If a poor person gets cancer, they should have all the same rights to life as a rich person who can afford all of the best like medical treatments. So I tend to call myself an anarcho-humanist because while I have libertarian ideals, while I have certain conservative ideals, I also have certain left-leaning ideals. And so those all lump together to where I think our priority should be to maximize the liberties and the lives of humans, not benefit private industry and government practice.
So I really like that explanation, by the way, and I appreciate you shedding light on that because I think that's really succinct. My question is always on anything that veers a little bit towards socialism, taking care of the masses. My question is always, okay, I like that ideal, and then how do we pay for it? Right? Because when you mentioned the guy making $75,000, or let's even go more extreme, the guy who's on unemployment who made $17,000 last year versus the guy who makes 10 million, at the end of the day, cutting edge drug treatments for cancer cost a lot of fucking money. So when you start to look at, a cancer protocol costing $250,000, the government doesn't pay for that. The government repossesses money from somebody so they can pay for it. So then it's like, all right, well, where do we come up with this idea of fair share? Because one of my favorite things to ask my liberal friends, I'm like, all right, cool. What is fair share mean? Is it 50% of income, 90% of income, 99% of income? So if we're going down that anarcho-humanist path, is it access? Is it a big enough tax base to where you do take care of everybody making less than X amount of dollars? Like, where does it get paid for?
Okay. So I got a sneaky little smile on my face when you said that.
Because you knew I was going to ask?
Because you have a taxation is theft hat behind you?
Yes.
We steal it. No.
Yes.
So the answer to that is Germany in the Nordic countries, like Sweden, all those, are socialist countries. They have those socialist reforms. One thing that I agree with them doing, and it's probably one of my most controversial beliefs when it comes to talking to libertarians, is price caps, right? So I think that Jeff Bezos shouldn't be able to make millions and billions of dollars every year. And I'm not saying you should cap it at like $2 million. Let's say we cap it at $100 million. So you can't pay a CEO any more than this amount of money. And if you do, that money is heavily taxed, or there's like certain penalties that businesses have. And so what this ideally, or at least the way that it reasons to me, is, hey, Sony, you have a price cap that you can pay your CEOs. And that includes like any housing or cars, anything like that. And so any money that is spent over that cap is going to be heavily taxed. This is going to push businesses, and some people might accuse this of like a Reaganomics style thinking, which nuanced and subtly different, but also I think maximally different. This would influence those companies, which are just naturally driven to make profit, to have to take those funds elsewhere. They either have to increase the payment for individuals on the shop floor, or they have to put them back into R&D, or they have to grow the company or whatever. That grows jobs, that grows all these different things. So if we take that like ideal, hey, there's a certain amount of capital that an individual can make every year. Anything over that is taxed. Hey, there's a certain amount of like capital that can be spent in these certain areas. And then we take those towards rewarding individuals that provide better healthcare or donate to certain causes, but not to the sense where it's like you can get out of paying taxes by doing it like certain businesses do, like You always see the horror story like, oh, this guy paid $0 in federal tax returns or whatever.
Bezos.
Right. You take those things, and it doesn't punish those individuals that want to achieve, because that's still a grand amount of money, and it doesn't punish businesses from not being able to be competitive by paying these individuals. What it does is it rewards businesses and individuals for donating or giving that money back to workers, or giving that money back into the system that is what all of our lives are derived around. And that can be used to give that access to healthcare. So it's like, okay, the Bezoses and the Musks and all these Fortune 500 company individuals, yeah, they're gonna feel the hit in their pocket. Hey, we used to be able to make a libertarian amount of money, but now we don't. I'm gonna move my business to Canada. And it's like, okay, cool. Then you better be spending that money in Canada, because like, good luck doing anything in America. Whatever, we make certain rules, we make certain ideas and practices around, and this is why it's a pipe dream, around money. And that's where you could draw that source from. So it doesn't have to be like taxation where, Scott, let's say you make $100,000 and I'm taking $50,000 of it to pay for people. You're still able to make progressive wages, and you're still able to have that capital. But now we treat it in a sense where businesses, high ranking individuals, high earners and stuff like that are rewarded for feeding into social services, feeding into different government projects, and could raise the capital that way, because ideally we don't want to be punished, we want to be rewarded. And if we're able to give those rewards to individuals in order to elicit those responses, it might help. Not a grand solution, not a specific and general enough solution, but that could be the case. It doesn't require everybody paying 90% of their pocket. It doesn't require all these different things. I do think we could also get that money from, however much people are going to hate me, reducing government bloat in certain areas, right?
Oh, I'm a big fan of that.
The military's pretty bloated budget, even though that's where a bunch of my money comes from for like defense contracting, things like that. Law enforcement, government bureaucracy. I don't think senators should be able to, like, public office shouldn't be a cash cow. It shouldn't be something that like,
oh, you mean Nancy Pelosi shouldn't be worth $120 million?
I'm not saying any individual specifically, but the fact that
I will individually specifically say that when you have politicians who sit in meetings and they're coming up with regulation that, oh, I don't know, might regulate Visa credit card services, and then Visa gives all these politicians, Republicans and Democrats, early access to like their IPO, and somehow magically Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi become, oh, we just added $10 million to our balance sheet because we happen to know that we needed to trade Visa stock and Apple stock and Google stock. Fuck you guys. Like, that bugs me so much.
There were a few Republican senators who did the same thing around the original COVID thing. And yes, absolutely. I think any campaign finances should be completely and totally not opaque. What's the other thing? Should have total oversight. I should be able to see every cent that Scott Groves used towards his senatorial seat. You shouldn't be able to be lobbying. Lobbying itself should be heavily regulated. My political reform would be all the money goes to a central area, and this is against your night watchmen's. But like, let's say we have a political committee, like a election committee. They get $10 billion, and anybody who's going into the primaries gets from that fund. That's how they pay for their
an equal percentage of that.
So like, let's say primaries, you guys all get like 10% of this certain fund. After you get out of primaries, and now we're looking at the major, then they get a larger portion of this fund, and we vet them. Okay, we're not going to have the Tiger King run for political office because it's like he doesn't meet the mental or like all these different like requirements.
Or let him run. I don't give a shit. Let the people speak.
Yeah, obviously, like, let more people run and whatnot. But it's like, when it comes to the release of those funds, that's where we get a little shrewd with it. And that way, if Blue Yeti microphones wants to donate $10 billion so that only omnidirectional microphones can be used in certain buildings. That doesn't go to a specific person. That goes to a giant pool that everyone's drawing from. So it isn't how, I'm not going to name names. It isn't SIG like paying people to be anti-gun. It's SIG contributing to a large pool, and those people are no longer lobbied and influenced by it. I don't know if it would necessarily work. I don't have any like diagrams or any sort of like education in the area, but it seems common sense, or it seems like it makes sense, because you take away that greed aspect that people tend to be motivated by, and it becomes more of a hey, it's really hard to be the fattest guy at the party if everyone's given equal amounts of food when it comes to the politics. It seems a little socialist, it seems a little communist, whatever, but it's not, because I'm not saying, oh, you take all the funding that Trump got in the 2016 election and you give a portion of it to Bernie. I'm saying you shouldn't be able to donate to a politician. That should go to a centralized fund, and that fund, whether it comes out of just the general taxation that the government has, like 0.05% of our GDP goes towards it, or if it's like individual contributions made to this political system, but not to individual parties or individual people, then I think that could help get away from certain aspects.
I remember reading some, man, I wish I would have bookmarked it. It was a really great article on this topic of lobbying and special interest groups and just all the dirty money. And what made me so sad is there is a number, and they had all these charts and graphs that I didn't understand, and these all kinds of standard deviation shit that I didn't take to statistics, so I didn't understand. But it was basically showing how a company gets to X amount of size, and then there's a diminishing return on research and development, paying your staff more, better benefits. And you get to this point like this, you reach this chasm where the best return for your dollar is on lobbyists.
Yeah.
And it was so like in my heart of hearts, who wants to be a capitalist, who wants to be a free market guy, the fact that we now have an entire industry, a giant industry in the lobbying firms where it's like, oh yeah, at some point, Johnson & Johnson or Merck or Amazon, their best use of their money is not to innovate and develop and create better products and better drugs and take better care of their staff. It's almost corporate malfeasance to not redeploy that money to lobbying to try to get government regulations in your favor and politicians in your back pocket. And just reading that turned my fucking stomach, where it's like, I want to believe in the free market. I want to believe that, Johnson & Johnson is putting more money into research and development to cure diseases or come out with a better, sunscreen that doesn't give you cancer. And no, the better deployment of money is to have lobbyists and politicians in your pocket. So when it does come out that one of your, sunscreens cause cancer, which Johnson & Johnson just pulled like 5 sunscreens off the market because they had all a bunch of carcinogens in them, you're better off lobbying politicians to make sure that doesn't take your company down than actually just doing the work that your company is created for. And that made me sick to my stomach and really made me question like my libertarian free market beliefs, because in a free market, you eventually get there and it's pretty fucking gross.
So what I learned from that whole segment right there is that if I wore all lead clothing, I could protect myself from the sun.
Yes, that's exactly
Sweet.
it.
No, so when it comes down to that, when it comes down to like lobbying, you were talking, I forgot his name, so forgive me, the episode with the ad agent, your friend who's an ad agent.
Yeah, Bob Merlotti, great guy.
Yeah, when you were talking to Bob, you asked him, at what point do you get diminishing returns as Coca-Cola for ads? Because it's like Coca-Cola's in everything, right? And that's the case. It absolutely is fiscally more responsible if I'm a large gun manufacturer to pay a Democrat and pay a Republican to carry forward with my proposed laws or whatever. Hey, I think 1911s should be legal, but I don't think that the PKM should be, because they operate off of very similar mechanics, but one of them was made in Russia and one of them is the most American gun that's ever been made. So like that one's legal in California, but the other one isn't. It's like, oh, that's weird. The California assault rifle and weapons ban, there are weapons on there, there are rifles on there, there are handguns on there, that the reason why they're on there is because the manufacturers paid the fees and the licensing in order to get them allowed in California, whereas others didn't. I think it's the PKM or the PMM. I forget the acronym, but it's the Cold War Russian handgun. It's an 8-round 9mm handgun, about the same size as a Walther. You can't get that in California because it doesn't have the bullet, like the little bullet window to see if it's loaded on top, and it doesn't have this sort of like safety on it. But you can with the 1911, which is a design that hasn't been changed since like 1910, despite its name, because everything goes through development. And it's like, oh hey, my gun doesn't have a sight on a window on top to see if it's loaded. All these different things that technically shouldn't make it legal in California, but it is because Kimber and because Colt paid for it to be on that registry. You're like, that doesn't seem right, because then that fundamentally takes the argument out that it's more dangerous to not have that little peep window to see if it's loaded. It fundamentally just gets rid of that argument. If the argument is, hey, these things are dangerous, but if you give them enough money, they're not dangerous enough to be banned, that is a flaw. And so, yeah, when it comes to that lobbying, it is more fiscally responsible to have that money lying around in order to skirt the laws or inform the laws. And that should be wrong in a representative republic. It should be wrong in a democracy. It should be wrong in general. And things like that is what made me I started life as like a punk, and then I kind of went Republican, and then I kind of went libertarian, and then I kind of like veered more like leftist leaning, and then I found where I lie now in this term that is probably made up by me, probably just read off of a website that I can't remember, but like that's what makes me quote unquote anarcho-humanist. I don't know what you would refer to that in the political system, but it's like I don't believe in liberal ideals. I don't believe in conservative ideals. I don't believe in neocons or neolibs, or even in the libertarian machine itself, because let's face it, privatization, anytime that we've truly tried that, we have had the recourse of what is fiscally responsible winning out over what is morally responsible. The whole Texas power outage, people getting like massive bills during a time where they weren't getting any power and freezing to death in their houses. It's like, oh yeah, fiscally, that's more responsible for you because somebody needs to pay for the power. Morally, it's abhorrent for people to die. And it's like, okay, that makes me never want to really classify myself in the libertarian category. And it makes me fear privatization so much.
Fair enough.
It's like, as much as you might hate the government or might hate government oversight and regulation and think that it needs to be changed, them being responsible to a group of people who are their voters, I think is more likely to get us towards right than them being responsible to a group of people who are monetarily affected by it. Hey, should we have this suntan lotion that has lead in it? Well, lead as a filler costs 0.01 cents, whereas non-lead as a filler costs 0.02 cents. So in the general grand scheme of things, I got a new Ferrari. Like that's what led me down my political course.
Nice, man. Well, we're coming up on 2 hours, and I always like to ask these. I always like to ask these questions. We're filming this in July of 2021, and we're kind of coming out of COVID, and now whatever people believe, the Delta variant or whatever's crazy right now. Now they're talking about going back to mask mandates, but let's just assume we're coming out of COVID. What are you most looking forward to getting back to? Like, obviously you and I have had a pretty great year and a half, personally, physically, we've still been doing jiu-jitsu just about every day. What are you looking forward to getting back to, like either the old normal or the new normal? What's on your mind that you're excited about for COVID?
So when it comes to COVID, like in the beginning, I took it very strict, and I got the vaccines when I was eligible to get the vaccines, things like that. Jiu-jitsu was really the only place that I was more liberal with it, where it was like, I'm rolling with people as long as the people aren't showing up sick, as long as we're all taking our precautions. That's a small risk that I'm willing to take. I'm wearing my masks elsewhere, things like that. I'm really looking forward to comedy and movie theaters again. I liked the whole telecommuting. I like a lot of that stuff. And originally, I'm not very sociable. I'm not going to be like, let's go out to the mall, let's go out to the bar and meet people. But the ability to just sit down in a comedy club, or if if it strikes you to go to an open mic or whatever, is a cool option to have, especially when it comes to like some of your favorite comedians needing that lifeline. So it's like, hey, I want to be able to go out there and support the people that I want to support, you know? So during COVID, I signed up to a few Patreons to help support creators that I really liked. Now that I could support them elsewise and they could get back to their regular like jobs, that seems to me to be very cool. That seems to be a positive. Whether or not we're out of this thing is up to smarter people than me to really say. But I mean, that's what I'm looking forward to. Yeah.
Cool, man. And then what's the question I forgot to ask, or that we're going to have, we're definitely having you back. What's the question I forgot to ask, or the topic we got to dive into deeper next time?
You were like, you never asked me about my sweet Dream hat that I got from Dream MMA in Santa Cruz, California. One of the best places to learn jiu-jitsu if you're out here.
Shout out to Dream.
Shout out to Dream and Jeff Martin, who's an excellent coach and an excellent athlete.
Yeah, and who just took first at a pretty large regional competition, just took gold. So congratulations to Jeff Martin, who we've had on the podcast before.
Yeah, awesome individual. One big topic that we were going to talk about that was a possibility on there was the whole mental health thing, which mental health and military mental health in my life. And then other than that, I feel like I don't know if we accurately covered most of the questions because I'm such a rambler and like my mind is working off of tangents more than it is working off of directly straight lines. But yeah, that was one aspect that we missed, which as just a teaser, I spent some time in a behavioral health unit, which is the mental asylum.
The way you say that is so like matter of fact. Yeah. I wouldn't call it the nut house. I would call it the decompression chamber. Let's call it that.
Yeah, I got to live a few days in that awesome Metallica song, Welcome Home Sanitarium.
There we go.
I got to be Chief from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah. Well, okay. We'll dig into your One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest the next time we're on, man. Dean, I really appreciate you being here and being so open and honest. And we'll have to dig more into this anarcho-humanist versus anarcho-capitalist the next time you're on.
Oh, yeah. Dude, this was so much fun. I can't believe it's already been 2 hours.
I know. Crazy. It goes so fast.
Yeah, it was awesome.
All right, man. I'll see you at jiu-jitsu.